before we can actually start creating a character and talking about symbols and anything like that, you have to understand how the tools work. So I will be going through most of it, not all of it, but enough for you to know everything that you need to know to start creating the characters that you want to create. Very important. So before we even get started, there's two things that you need to know. First of all is if you go over a tool object, just doesn't want to work. Okay, there we go. When you go over a tool object, you can notice a yellow box pops out. And the yellow box tells you the name of the tool, and it tells you the keyboard shortcut. So this is the brush tool, and that's B. Here's the pencil tool, and that's Y. Rectangle tool, and R. And that's something for you guys to start remembering and start to getting to know what buttons you need to press to just work efficiently, work faster. You don't need to, but you know, it's something I would recommend. Especially the B for the brush tool, the E for the eraser tool, things like that. With that said, if you notice after this line right here, you will notice there is a lot of options here. And if you change a tool, so let's go from the brush tool to the pencil tool, you notice that here it starts to change. And that's because these are the different options that you have for that tool that you're specifically choosing. So keep that in mind. Not only this, but if you go here to the properties panel, you will notice that when I change, that also changes, because not only are there options in this section, there's also options in this section. So always keep the properties tool next to you. It's like your best friend. Alright, with this said, let's start learning about the tools. There's a lot to cover and very little time, so I'll probably break it up into a couple of pieces. So I'm going to start with the navigational part of the tools, which is this hand tool and this zoom tool. And there's a couple of ways to do this. So if you Apple plus, you zoom in. If you Apple minus, you zoom out. I'm sure PC is slightly bit different, but not that much. It should be the same thing. If you go to the zoom tool here, there's a plus and a minus, so you do plus to enlarge and minus to zoom out. So you can do it any way you like. But if you notice, the stage looks kind of weird and it's in a weird position, and you want a little more control over your stage. So another thing you can do is you can hold spacebar and you can drag and move the stage to a position that you like, and or you can hold H and do the same thing, and or you can actually go to the hand tool here and move it around the way you like. With that said, that's all you really need to know about navigating through here for now. So let's start with the selection tool. So if you already noticed, I made a couple of like lines, squiggly lines and things like that for sample purposes. Technically, this has not been done with the line tool. This has been done with the brush tool, and that's really important to know. And you will see the differences between the line tool and the brush tool soon, because there are differences to it, and we'll get to it when we get to it. Until then, we're going to use the selection tool, and the selection tool is very useful in a lot of different ways. So you can click and highlight individual objects just like this. You can also click and shift click to highlight more than one object. You can also drag and highlight, and you can move around. So shift here and you can move around just like this. Okay? Or you can drag like that. And now we're going to zoom in, and there's a couple of things that you should know that the selection tool can also do. One of the things that I can do is that if you notice my mouse, when I go towards a corner, you see a little square. And when I hold and drag, you see I can actually manipulate the sections here. And they're also very straight. It's not very round. On the other hand, if I go with the mouse and go here to this corner and you see the circular cursor, then you can drag and you can notice that it comes out much more circular than before, than if I did the corners. Now, what if you want this part to be sharper and not be round? Well, you hold the Option and then you drag and it will come out sharper. So there's a lot of cool things that you can do with the selection tool. Just like that. You can also highlight, delete, or you can actually pick a whole line, whole object, and delete. Now, the last thing that you should really know about the selection tool is the UI that comes here on the side. And I'm going to show you the examples. And you can ignore this one, the snap to objects. We're going to go to smooth and straighten. So for this example, I'm showing you a circle, and the circle is not exactly perfect. There's a couple of issues here and here, and I want to smooth the line. So to smooth the line, you click, and then these options pop up, and you press smooth. And the more you do it, the more it smooths out. Like that. Now, as you can tell, it's not perfect, but it does a very good job of smoothing things out. And also, if you do it a lot of times, there's going to be a point where it's going to break. So keep that in mind. You want to do it somewhat, but you don't want to do it so insane that you're going to break it. Okay? And the other one is the straighten tool, which is the opposite of the smooth. Basically, it's going to straighten the lines out, see, to create these really sharp points. And you can do it like the circle as many times as you want, and then there will come a point where it's just going to get stuck because you can't straighten it anymore. You can use a combination of smooth and straighten, like that. Or you can just highlight a small section and then make changes like this. Okay? So there's a lot of things that you can do to make some really nice shapes. So it's something to consider. So that's that tool. We're going to talk about the Subselection Tool. Subselection Tool is a little bit different. You can't manipulate it as much as the Selection Tool in terms of erasing certain sections or doing anything very particular with it other than moving the vertices. So you're going to see what I mean in a second. And for this, I'm going to take the stage and I'm just going to make it a little darker. And again, the properties will be explained at another time. Right now I'm just going through the tools. So let's use this as an example. So when I highlight it, even when I drag and highlight, it highlights everything. If I click it, it highlights everything. So I can only do so much with it. It's not like the selection tool where I could erase and do things like that. You know, have that much manipulation. But what I can do is, if you notice, there are green lines with white dots, and those represents the vertices that make up this particular fill. It's not exactly a line, and that will be explained later, but let's call it a fill for now. So you can take this point and you can drag it, similar to the selection tool, but this time you can actually see the vertices and the points. Other thing that you can do is you can hold Option and you can drag, and you will create this new cursor with 2 bars, kind of like an Illustrator, with these 2 bars and then the point in the middle. And the point in the middle is the movement of the line, just like this. But if you hold Option, you can manipulate 1 bar at a time. And you can be very flexible to how you manipulate it. You can press Option and then hold and then move it around, and you will see it move in real time. So you can see what's going on. You can also, once you've broken up the bar, you don't have to hold Option anymore. You can just move the bar and manipulate it as good as you want, just like this. So as well as you want. If you haven't broken it up using the options, see, both move together simultaneously. So that's something to consider. So a lot of the times, when you want to create a bar, right, hold Option, and if you just want to manipulate both bars at the same time, just click the bar that you want to manipulate and both of them will move. If you want to move them separately, remember to hold Option, and then you will only hold that one section. And that's how you're done with that. Okay? So there's a lot of flexibility in that. Move the point, can have one side, things like that. So that's something good to consider with this. And if you notice here, there's nothing else to do with it. So that's everything that you can do with the Subselection tool. Also, please take note that there's an arrow on the bottom right-hand corner of these icons here. That means there is more than one UI element that you can highlight. So for each piece. This selection tool does not have it because there's nothing else that you can highlight. So it's kind of like Photoshop, like you click and you hold and you get different options. These are not important, so we're skipping through that. And now we're going to go to the free transform tool. Again, very similar to the selection tool, but there are a lot of real differences that you can't just do with the selection tool. So let's click on this. So when you have this tool on and you click on this, you're going to notice that there's a box surrounding it, and it's highlighting all of it. And this happens, and you can shift select. It's the same thing. Very important. So what you can do is a couple of things. You can make it bigger, you can scale up and scale down. And notice it's not being perfectly scaled. I'm doing that on purpose. Okay? To perfectly scale, you take Shift, you hold Shift, and you will notice, zoom in a little more, that when you click here on that corner, it scales up perfectly. See? In all directions. If you don't, and you click this corner, it's very random. You just, you can't uniform scale. Notice also, when I move from this to this, this means that I am skewing the image. And I'm going to show you right now. So as you can tell, I am skewing the image side to side, and you can do this with all parts. Okay? Zoom out a little bit like this. Okay? And like that. So you can do that with all sections. You just gotta notice that you're having the double arrow like this. So Shift to scale like this, drag like this, and then skew like this. Now, another thing you should know is, again, how to rotate. And to rotate, you go to one of these corners that you like, and you're going to see that it goes from this icon, that's up here to this circular icon. And you're going to click and you're going to drag, just like that. Okay? And that's how you drag it. And you rotate it. Now take note. I'm just going to fix this just a little bit. Make it a little less awkward. Now if you notice, when I rotate, or when I move up and down just like this, it rotates and it moves within something called an anchor point. And the anchor point is this white dot here. And this is where everything is gravitating on. So think of this as like the center of gravity. And everything is rotating within that certain object here, and or scaling or shifting within that certain object here. And sometimes when you're animating, you want to change that. So to do that, you just grab here and then you move the anchor point down. So now take note, when I go down and up, or when I rotate, notice how it has a different rotation. It's rotating from this point. This is the what I call like the gravity point of rotation. So if you want to do like a squash and stretch or a skew or anything like that, the anchor point is going to be really important, placing the anchor point. So that usually will go on the bottom. But it can go anywhere within here. So, and also when you let it go, it's going to go back to its place. So you want to make sure you do whatever changes you want to make. There are exceptions to this, but we will talk about those later. So that's with that. That's all that you need to know for the basics of that. Now let's look at the same tool and let's look at the UI. And basically, it's the same thing. We did the rotate and skew. We did the scale. Now distort we didn't do. And to do distort, you basically click on the object and then you press Apple on a Mac. And like I said, I'm sure the PC is really easy. It's probably like the Windows button or something. And you have to go to a corner and then you drag out or inwards or whatever you want to do. But if you notice, the object is getting really distorted. So this could be a kind of very cool way to make a ground, or, you know, have the little 3D effect going on for it. So it looks like things that are closer to the horizon are bigger, things that are farther away are, you know, are smaller. And so that's something really cool to know. Again, you can manipulate the point here, and you can stretch it out. So that's something really, really cool if you know how to manipulate it to make it like something like this. So imagine this is like a path, and you're manipulating it to create that sense of space and perspective. So that's something good to know. Another thing that's really cool is the envelope. Envelope? I don't know. It's probably not envelope. It's probably envelope. So envelope, again, you're going to see this over and over again. Here are the bars, and you can manipulate it, and it's sort of like a warp in Photoshop. So you move it around and you change it to what you want. Same options. You hold the option to move one side like this, or you can move the whole piece like this. It's the same tools, and this can be really cool if you're trying to do some type of deformation towards an object. So that's actually a very, very useful tool. So that's the free transform tool. We're gonna ignore the 3D rotation tool because that's for 3D objects. That could be discussed at a later time. I have Flash CS 5.5. At this point with this Flash, it's very glitchy. It's not the best. I don't know how CS6 is or CC is. So I'm going to skip that for now. Lasso tool, very simple. It's similar to the selection tool. The only difference is that there's going to be situations where, you know, you highlight an object, like let's say we do this and we'll move it closer. Let's say I want to highlight this section only, but if I just click and drag, like, I'm missing out this part, so I have to shift click, and then, I missed the part again, I have to shift click again, and I might accidentally do this, and it's just terrible. So the lasso tool is very cool because I can click and drag and draw what my selection will be, just like this, and then do what I need to do with it. So you could draw out shapes like that. See how I cut it in a more circular fashion, and manipulate it to what you want to do. So it's pretty much similar to the selection tool, but it gives you a lot more flexibility in that sense. So that is definitely something good to know. With that said, we're going to stop here for now, and we're going to do part 2, which is like the pen tool, the text tool, the line tool, etc. And we're getting there. So let's do this.